Welcome, Daniel Bekerman, to the Release the Genie Within podcast. So, do you know why I chose Release the Genie Within as a name for my podcast?
Tell me, please.
Okay, here we go. So I believe that there's a power and a presence within each and every one of us. And you know, because you've tapped into it. I've looked at your 100 of films that you've made since 2005 as a producer. And so there's a power and presence within each one of us. I call it the genie within, and you ask it, and not like a Disney genie where you get 3 wishes, you get unlimited wishes. So asking you shall receive, seeking you shall find, knocking it shall be open. And that's my philosophy. And that's what I wanted to talk with you about today, with some of the films that you've produced on such a large spectrum. I mean, when you look at it, you've done horror films like The Witch, okay? Then there was Youth Unstoppable, which is a documentary about the climate. And you also did It's a Wonderful Life, which a wonderful knife, actually. It's a wonderful knife. I love that title. Yeah. And it's kind of a satire. And then you did the newest one that I know of is The Apprentice. And even since I've talked with you, I see 4 or 5 other films out there that you produced. So I'm really excited to talk with you about your journey as an independent filmmaker and producer. And I just want to say that I really appreciate you having here what you've done for independence. When I look at this list, I mean, I wrote it down. There's pages and pages and pages of films that you've produced. And I just want to say that I appreciate it. And I'm sure my viewers, independent filmmakers, also appreciate the path that you are opening up for each and every one of us to be able to go out there and make films that inspire, enlighten, and entertain, tell stories, move people emotionally.
I appreciate that very much. And yeah, thank you for having me on your podcast and in this discussion, Rich. I appreciate that you have a vision and you're working hard to inspire people, and you recognize that there's a dimensionality to filmmaking. It's not just popcorn and throwaway entertainment that is just sort of a product that people make purely for profit, but there's another dimension to it. There's perhaps some insight that can come from filmmaking and storytelling. That's sort of that type of thinking is what drives me. So I'm really happy to talk to you.
Okay, so your newest accolade is your awards, the Canadian Screen Awards for The Apprentice. Best Picture, Best Leading Actor, Best Supporting Actor, Best Makeup, and of course, Best Hair on Donald Trump, on Bucky.
You could win Best Hair today, not me, not so much. Yeah.
I noticed you grew a little bit more hair on your face than the last time I talked with you. Cool.
Yeah.
Remind me of my college professor, Steve Tringali. He was my film professor. He actually hired me after we graduated. I worked for him for about 6 or 7 years and taught me everything I know about filmmaking. So there's that connection we have. And then there's also another connection. I just feel a real a connection with you. And the more I look into the films that you're making and what they're saying and how people can relate to them. Now, a lot of the films you've produced are like, well, there's different genres. There's the horror, there's the documentary, there's the comedy, and then there's the political situation that we're going through with Donald Trump. Do you want to talk about that in particular? Let's talk about your award that you won. How was that?
The Apprentice, yeah. Well, winning the award is great. We were nominated for many awards with The Apprentice. In particular, the actors were nominated many times in really all of the most prestigious categories and awards shows in the world. The Oscars, the BAFTAs, the SAG Awards, the Golden Globes, like all of that. We were nominated. And then the fact that the actors won Best Picture at the Canadian Screen Awards, and it is a Canadian movie. It's a co-production between Canada and Ireland and Denmark. So I partnered with producers in each of those countries, and so it's fitting. I think that it won at the Canadian Screen Awards, and when I went up there on stage,
I saw that.
I gave a shout out to Ali, the director, and said, I think I said something like, Ali, if you want to find some guts in this film industry, you gotta. I told you you have to come to Canada. So I feel proud. I feel proud that Canada is the place that we were able to make the movie,
Yeah.
and that we won some awards. And not just proud to win something, but proud because I genuinely feel the movie has real substance. People made all kinds of assumptions because it's about Donald Trump,
Mm.
thought it would just be either an attack piece or a puff piece or something, but I think we were able to walk a tightrope, on the one side. If we fell off on the one side, it would have been sort of just like a Saturday Night Live skit or a CNN, you know, piece about how bad Donald is, and on the other side, if we fell off, then maybe we would be just playing into his narrative and buying into to what you know that worldview. But I think we kept it tight. We kept ourselves on that tightrope, and we walked that thin line where I think it's the thin line of integrity and and uh, and of humanity, actually,
Yeah.
because on the one hand you can reduce things to a cartoon. Sometimes that there's place for cartoons. I like watching Saturday Night Live like anybody else, but um, to take a serious look at this subject, I don't think you can get much value out of reductionism or cliches, even if in a knee-jerk moment, maybe I might agree with one or another sort of cliche about Donald Trump. Really, to learn something, to get real value, and to grow one's perspective, the fact is he is a human being. And
Yeah.
so is Roy Cohn. It's really about the relationship between Donald and Roy. And so if we want to understand, then we've got to treat them as what they are. They're human beings who've gone a certain direction in their lives, and what led to them going in that direction. That's what I feel like the movie has some insights into.
Yeah. Um, I'll tell you one thing about that movie when I saw it, what it did for me. I didn't realize when I was watching it exactly what you're saying, that I really felt for the characters.
Sure.
I wasn't like judging their actions. I was just learning about Trump and how he became the monster that he is. But uh, I mean, here's something else that I felt too, and I realized much later. When he had his big parade, his big military parade, and all the media were covering it, saying that it was a joke, and he sat there really sad watching it. I don't know if you've seen any of the videos on it,
Yeah, a
but
little
I
bit. Yeah.
felt real compassion for the guy. I felt really, really bad because I could identify with that as a filmmaker, having a big project that you have in your mind and you're really
Hmm.
excited. This is going to win an Academy Award. I know it is. It's really great. And then all of a sudden, it just gets pulled out from under you. And I felt that compassion for him. And I'm wondering how many people can feel that. And I did that because I saw that movie, The Apprentice. I was able to
Oh,
see how he developed into this character that he became, and
yeah,
I could have
yeah.
compassion. We don't know what somebody's like until we walk in their shoes.
Yeah, and I think, I appreciate that the movie had that effect. And, I think what another thing that comes to mind is like, it's like, you know, the most powerful boy in the world throws himself a little birthday party, and not everybody shows up, because not all the power in the world can actually make everybody like you. And
Yeah.
that's pretty sad. That's
It's
pretty
sad
sad.
that he's got to
It's
make
sad.
people like him, and especially uh, at what was it, NATO, where he just like was reaching out, trying to make people shake hands with him and stuff.
Yeah.
It was
And
really
don't get me
sad.
wrong, it's sad. And I think the movie is successful in its shining a light in into the sort of dark corners of of his humanity,
Yeah.
and I think that has value. Don't get me wrong, I do also think it is very dangerous to have that personality type with his hands on that much power.
Yeah.
So I think there's sort of practical matter. There's sort of an artistic matter of what's the value of a story of a movie, and I think that is mostly a human value, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm proud of the movie we made. But living in the world as I do, I feel like I have to also mention that someone really who's got that scale of emotional, I would say, trauma
Mm.
that he's acting out of is dangerous. And for the people who are most affected by it, it's maybe not that interesting to understand him as a human being. And I understand that. But I do ultimately feel along the lines of what you were saying when you started, you feel like you're like one man movement down there on Venice Beach. I'm with you because I do feel that, and it's so counterintuitive because so much of us wants to just paint the world in a binary way, right? Like there's good and evil, there's the good guys and the bad guys. And it's so hard to withhold that judgment when it seems so obvious that someone's in the wrong,
Yeah.
And it's a very subtle thing because I think on one level, yeah, you have to recognize danger, and I do recognize the danger of Donald Trump. But when it comes to in my own mind, do I tell myself that he is somehow not human or he's pure evil or something like that? I don't do that. And I think that it is harder, but it is more truthful and it has more potential for growth of it gives me more potential for growth as a human being to understand him as a human being, even when part of me is trying to judge him.
Yeah.
And I think that is very counterintuitive in times of a lot of, when things are really frightening in the world. It's very counterintuitive to maintain, like to withhold that kind of judgment where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys, and I'm obviously the good guy, and they're obviously the bad guy. And that's what he does, by the way. Donald Trump is the least restrained person I can think of when it comes to judgment. So this is not me repaying some sort of favor he's doing to the world because he
Yeah.
doesn't. But what can we learn even from that?
Yeah.
To me, these are interesting questions that are not the answers are not obvious, and I'm not just asking myself easy questions that I can instantly know the answer to. That to me is the beginning of what makes a good story. Don't ask a question with the obvious answer as the foundation of your story, of your movie.
Yeah.
Challenge yourself. Say, okay, this person, I'm struggling to find the humanity in this person. Diving into that, diving into shine a light into that dark, what seems like a dark cave with no humanity in it. That's a great place to find a story.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The minute you start to judge somebody, then you're judging, that's judgment, and it's within you. And that same judgment you judge somebody else with, you're going to judge yourself, especially as a filmmaker trying to produce a movie, which is a huge feat to be able to take a movie from conception to completion. And so if you're judging somebody else and you have that judgment within you, that's the same judgment you're going to use as strong on yourself. So you start judging yourself. And when you judge yourself, you put up a wall to your success. You cannot find success when you're sitting in judgment. So you got to release the judgment for Trump. You got to release the judgment for what's going on in the country. Everything is unfolding in perfect order. We just don't know it yet. Um, and if you can move forward, for me, if I move forward with that concept of no judgment, everything is unfolding in my life in perfect order, then you go with the flow. You allow yourself, you're going down the river with the current. You're not paddling against it. And that's why when I go
Mm.
to these protests and see people with the signs and they're paddling against it, and when you're bucking up against something, it's going to push harder. And so how do we change that into finding more love and compassion for, for everybody that's involved in this? Not only the people from, other countries that are being thrown out.
It's a great question. And you know, for me, when it just a bit more on the idea of judgment, I'm just too aware that when I judge someone, even when it seems like obvious there's judgment, that judgment is appropriate, I'm too aware that what I'm really talking about is some part of myself that I'm uncomfortable with, because that's what it is. That's the urge to judge. It's it comes out of our own pain. It comes because we're trying to put a fence around of a part of ourself that we don't want to have to deal with. And so we put that same fence around something in the outside world that seems like it matches that part of ourselves, and then we don't have to deal with it, and we've also kind of made an excuse for ourselves to mirror it, and that's projection. And I'm too aware of that mechanism to feel super confident about judging in any kind of, you know, like zero sum way
Yeah.
someone else.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can't understand, you can't learn, and you can't deal with actual real dangers again, which there are actual real dangers here. I don't want to pretend this is all just in theoretical land and it doesn't matter. It does matter. It's
Mm.
affecting real people's lives.
Yeah.
That can't be forgotten. But building human connection, to me, and building human connection and building human understanding, I can't think of really any other way out of some of the worst parts of this mess.
Yeah. Exactly. So I wanted to talk about, and let's stick with the whole idea of The Apprentice. We can talk about your other films too, maybe another time, but
Sure.
using The Apprentice as an example, I have a question. Have there been times during the production when something kind of magical happened, synchrodestiny, synchronicity, was something maybe you were thinking about, you brought about? Like all of a sudden, boom, a miracle just happened in your life. Can you think of anything that I can think of a million things in my life because every day it happens.
Yeah, yeah. I noticed those things, you know, unfold. And you see these parallels, you see these things that seem to line up in ways that don't necessarily seem like logical or statistically likely that they would line up. And you take notice. I don't usually know what they mean, but I try to notice. And, I also try to be, and I appreciate we're talking about spirituality in some ways. And I'm really actually excited to talk about that. I also want to say, like, for me, a foundation of how I see the world and how I approach what my work is through profound skepticism and questioning. And, I try to look at my own motivations in making assumptions or drawing connections. Because to me, there's magic in the world, but I also don't want to, you know, tell myself a little bedtime story just because it's comforting if a deeper part of me understands that I'm missing a larger truth by telling myself that bedtime story.
Mm.
So that said, there does seem to be I am thinking of some specific things in my own work and in my own life where I'm like, those parallels are just weird.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
does happen. Yeah.
yeah. No, it's not coincidence. I believe that there's an intelligence out there that's working uh, in and as and through each and every one of us. And when we're connected to it, that's when the synchronicity happens. When we allow it to reveal itself, through imagination and our thoughts, especially our imagination. That's what we create. If you can
Mm,
imagine it, you can create it. And so
mm,
it's just your imagination, which leads me to another question, which is thoughts become things. The Buddha, I first heard
mm,
it from the Buddha, the Master. The Christ said, asking you shall receive, seeking you shall find, knocking it shall be opened. And so,
mm.
in your experiences in producing these films, do you can you can you are you a witness to maybe the magic when it happens, all because of the way you think? I mean, you must have a very positive attitude to be able to produce 100 some odd films since 2005. There must be
Yeah,
something within you that you believe. What do you get your source of power from? What do you get your inspiration from? And does it come from somewhere else
yeah. I
within?
mean, those are good questions. I mean, first of all, I feel like I can't answer that without just acknowledging that how collaborative film is, and how much really it's about, making connections with other people and going on a journey together. And I think that's you know, key. And if I made it all about myself, that would be disingenuous. But I will say that I, at a certain point in my career, producing, I did come to recognize how pervasive stories are, not just in culture, but in every single aspect of our lives, and how much our world is, in fact, built on stories. And I think that's demonstrably true.
Yeah,
And so when I started to sort of recognize that, from the economy, politics, religion, every aspect, and it doesn't diminish any one of those areas to recognize that these are stories.
yeah,
What it does to me, or what it did to me, is it illuminated just, I think, a deeper truth that I'm living my life as expressed through the stories I invest myself in. So so I think, like, there's been a point in my career where I really did stop looking at it as a career or a job or a vocation. It's just life. And so I think that just means as if I'm invested in anything, I'm invested in the stories I'm working with a team of people to tell. And so there is a fundamental, you talk about belief, like there is a belief in the if I don't have a belief in the story I'm trying to tell, I'm not going to be effective.
yeah,
So, there I have to feel it on that real fundamental level, or I won't be effective. And so so I think there's that, and then there's also, I do believe in the possibility, and I hesitate to use the word belief because to me I can just sort of see it in a logical way, that there is a potential, since our society, civilization is made out of stories, then storytelling has the potential to make a better world. And I'm not necessarily, I wouldn't say like a utopianist or something, but I do believe there are better and worse ways to live on the planet for people. And so I do believe that there are stories that could bring us more in tune with, the planet, all of the other, living creatures that we share the planet with, and, other people, other animals and plants. And I believe that respecting all life has a has there the I think that would be a better society, a better civilization, if we were more in tune with each other and with all life on Earth.
yeah. Which leads me to another aspect of the political situation that's going on. What happens when that freedom to choose the stories that we want to tell gets taken away from us? as filmmakers, as creatives.
Hmm.
And I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, and I think you're right to be concerned about it. And I think we experienced it with The Apprentice, when the most powerful person in the country tells the gatekeepers of the industry that they are not allowed under legal threat. They cannot permit this story. And by the way, he had no legal case.
Mm,
He had no, he threatened us, but he knew he couldn't win.
mm,
And I knew we were on solid ground with the movie. And from a legal perspective, I was very careful
yeah,
uh, and thorough about that. And so he he didn't use the legal system because he that was not actually a tool available to him. He just used fear
yeah.
and threats. And unfortunately, fear and threats can be very effective.
From the most
So
powerful man in the world.
yeah, and when you look at an example like Amazon, they just paid $40 million for a puff piece about Melania Trump. That's the choice they did make, and the choice they didn't make is working on a movie that Trump wasn't pleased with. That's a business decision on a certain level, but when you add up amongst all the companies, all these business decisions, and the force of the threat
Yeah.
is pointing in a certain direction, then all of those business decisions combined add up to a narrowing of the kinds of stories that are being told. And, you know, especially when this story is not just some repetition of a political talking point, but I think there's real value in it. There's
Oh,
real insight into the like the human archetype that Donald represents and Roy Cohn. There's real insight and value in that. So to have that shut out is a degradation of the kinds of diversity of stories that can exist in American culture. By the way, it did very well around the world,
oh, I'll
the movie.
bet.
And
I
even though it
bet.
was suppressed in the US, a lot of people still saw it. But so he didn't succeed. He tried to completely shut us down. He did not succeed.
Yeah.
Um, but there's actually a quote along the lines of what you're saying. Uh, and I'm not saying I even necessarily fully agree with this because I don't necessarily agree with the word, but there is a quote that evil exists because of the stories that are not told.
Yeah.
Evil exists because of the stories that are not told. And you know, I think there's a lot of ways to look at that, but I think my intuition is there's truth in it.
Yeah. And that's the challenge um, because the media is not covering a lot of the stories that need to be told. And therefore, the only truth is the truth that the right wing media is putting out there. And as a result, you weren't able to get the recognition. And if you did, if you were able to show that in the States, I don't think would be where we are now. I really don't. That movie really opened a window for me as to what's possible if somebody like that becomes president.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sort of seeing it even differently slightly as we're talking, how it played out. Because, and hearing you talk about the protests, um, yeah, you're right. So much of it's a natural human cycle, right? There's a power structure. That power structure does things that are, you know, cause pain. Uh, and then there's a reaction, but the reaction ends up being a reflection of that same pain. So it becomes a sort of binary conversation between those two sides.
Mm,
And the reaction, which right now is the left is reacting, what becomes really difficult is for the reaction to keep sight of the big picture and not just actually let that first word that was spoken by the one side, the Trump side in this case, be the act control the whole sentence, you know? So like they're really finishing his sentences, but they're not actually telling the story themselves. They're losing sight of all the other stories that are possible because they're allowing him to control the narrative, even
Yeah.
in their reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a concept that each film that you create, a person creates, it's like a personal evolution for them, for the creator itself. And so, do
Hmm.
you see each new production that you do as a part of your own hero's journey, shaping who you are becoming as a person, not only as a producer, as a filmmaker, as a person? And if so, let's talk about one of your newest films and how that had changed your perspective in the producing of
Uh,
it.
yeah, sure. Yeah. And I mean, you're right. I've actually made close to 100 movies, which kind of boggles my own mind. Because I'm not that old. I got some gray hair, but I'm not that old. And the truth is, those movies there's a wide variety. Some of those movies are movies that I really came from. I nurtured from infancy to all the way through to the end. Some are really I'm more of like a facilitating producer.
Mm,
It's someone else's. It's or the origins are with someone else. So it varies across all the movies I've made. I'd say it's about half and half, about half sort of originate with my company, and about half are things I've shepherded along for other creators. And Yeah, but there is one movie recently that actually I just finished filming last week, called The Eden Express. And I don't want to give too much away because it's very early days and we haven't done too much press for it. But it is a case of a story that I read this book, The Eden Express by Mark Vonnegut, in my early 20s, and it just resonated deeply with me. I found it beautiful, inspiring,
yeah,
terrifying, all kinds of powerful ingredients in there. And to me, it also really captured, I would say, the spirit of youthful idealism. When you're young and you look out at the world, you see the stuff that's wrong with it. You see the cliff that that we're racing to fall off of.
yeah,
And you can also see the sort of beautiful potential of humanity. You can say, okay, well, you see the darkness, but you also see this beautiful potential, and you want to do something about it. Um, and you want to participate in building something that's more like the potential. And yet you run into obstacles
yeah,
and you are challenged, um, and your commitment is challenged. And then you're often offered a choice, in life. You're like, do you want to keep trying to build that better world that popped into your head like a little dream, like a flash of light? Do you want to keep moving towards that? Or do you want to take this comfortable life, got your Netflix and chill, got your paycheck, vacation, like not that there's something inherently wrong with that, but I think it is sad. It's sad, the pressures in our lives that make us give up that beautiful dream that I think, many of us, I can't speak for really anybody but myself, but I know that I have felt a connection to that dream, and through many stories that I've been involved with, I feel like I have kept that dream alive.